All right, we have posted our rough storyboard sketch. We have animated with the assets in the stage, and then we finally saved for or exported, saved for Web Legacy as a GIF with selective color at 256 pixel colors, bicubic smoother, and it posts and looks good. Now we got to do the final requirement, which is this refined storyboard that tells the full story of the transformation in just 9 frames. But these are 9 frames from our animation. So what do? We go back to our stage. I'm going to use my center stage. And now this is a little complicated. It's not hard, but it's specific, right? So this is our timeline, right? Notice how my timeline is slightly different than my layers. So for instance, you see how this layer doesn't change because I transition it. I have these in-betweens. What I want to do is turn my timeline into a flipbook. So just like I made my frames initially in the timeline from my layers, now I want to turn my frames back into layers. So what do? I click on the timeline options and then I say flatten frames into layers. And this is good for everyone to do. It's how you clean up an animation. So flatten frames into layers. That means any kind of opacity effects, any kind of multiple frame, like animating on the stage you did. Now notice that in your layers, they are called frames, right? So now I have to empty out all of these. I hold down Shift, I drag them to the trash, and I can close timeline. And now I scroll down to the bottom. This is turning it into a flipbook that we can pull screen grabs from. And underneath frame number 1, which I'm going to mark as gray here, I have my last layer. So layer 35, I select layer 35, I go all the way to the base and the background, get rid of them all, delete. So now I only have the frames. It's like a full flipbook. I had 37 animation frames. Now I have 37 layers that are named frame 1 through 37. Okay, now I want to find the very first frame, right? And I have to ask myself, is that where I want to start my animation? Or not my animation, my refined storyboard. If I look at my sketch, that's not what my first frame is. My first frame is where the character is already introduced, like frame 7. So I think this is where I want to start. So I'm going to mark that as blue. All of that makes sense? Okay. It's like a stack. It's like a flipbook just like this, all stacked on top of itself. So I'll pass this around. So this is how you turn your animation into a flipbook. Okay, now I'm going to use my guides. So remember guides, you use the move tool, you click on your ruler, and you click around it. And we're just going to make sure, this is to be foolproof, that we are cropped, that there is nothing outside of this 8 by 8 inch square, because we're going to do layout with it. So then I use the crop tool, and I crop right to those guides. And that's going to cut those cards, that make the flipbook. It's like the trim job. Now everything's clean. I'm going to leave those guides there, but now I'm going to try to find my center panel. So I've marked my first panel as blue. What's my center panel? In my story, that's when he starts to melt, right? So that might be maybe here. Or maybe a little bit after, like here. So let's make this my center panel. I'm going to mark that as yellow. So I have my first panel, my center panel. Now around, and you can always change this later, but around my center panel, I'm now going to grow my format. So formatting in Photoshop's really tricky, because it's really hard to get exact measurements with the guides. But what it's really good at is centering an image, right, by the pixel. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on the default color. So we have black and white as the background. And then we're going to say image canvas size. And it should be 8 by 8, right? That's what our animation has been. We're going to change that to be 30 inches wide by 40 inches tall. We've used that measurement before. It's the largest you can use for a 4-color offset lithography press. And we're going to grow it from the middle. And that is the only way in Photoshop to ensure that our square is perfectly in the middle of our printout, right? There we go. Now we get kind of a gingham tablecloth, right? It's that gray checkerboard, which means nothing's there. This is like going to be dealing out cards at a family picnic. But that gingham tablecloth is really distracting. So I'm going to make a new layer at the back. Move it behind my last frame, and I'm going to say edit fill with white. So set my fill options to white at normal 100%. And now I have a white tablecloth. Much nicer. Now this is where you have to pay attention. This is the new stuff. So now I have 30 inches by 40 inches. I have my middle frame, really all of my frames just stacked up in the middle of the table here, right? And I have guides around them. But I need to make like a perfect template for how to deal them out to the 8 players around the middle deck, right? And it doesn't work to just do this. Whoops. Doesn't work to just do this because I don't want them to all stack right on top of each other. I need there to be a gutter. So these are the new tools. I'm going to go to View and Show, and I'm going to show the grid. Okay. And it hurts your eyes a little bit to look at it, but this grid is based on inches. And if we zoom in, you'll see that it's 1 inch is one big square in the grid. I'm going to use that, and I'm going to bring my guides 1 inch from each side of my animation. Now this only works if your animation is 8 by 8, which is why we use that square format. Right? Once I've moved guides 1 inch away from the center, then I can turn off the grid, which I can do with a shortcut, or I can go to View, Show, but it's Control apostrophe to turn on and off the grid. Just like it's Control semicolon to turn on and off your guides. So now we have it perfectly centered. What does that allow? Well, now with my first frame, which I marked with blue, I can use my Move tool with Auto Select Layer turned off. So I can select that frame and then move it into the first position. I can turn off my middle frame for now and know that I need to fit 4 more frames or 3 more frames between this one and this one. So I think, well, what's next? Maybe this one? Maybe this one? Nope, that's too soon. That one's too similar. So yes, it's going to be this one. That's going to be my frame 2. Then what? Should it be that one? Should it be right to there? I think it should be right to here. Okay, and then it's like a comic book. You're deciding. Then what? Actually, I think this is probably a better center frame. And then I'm wondering if this one should move to here. Whoops, wrong one. Very controlling of layers, right? Wrong one. You can use the eyeball to see which is which. Yep, it's that one. So maybe I move this to here, and then I use this one and put it there, like dealing under the deck. Okay, now I can start, so I'm going to change this to the center. Turn this one off. And then I can decide, well, what's next? I can go right to this one, I think. And now, once you get past the center, you're dealing from the top of the deck, right? So you don't have to try to figure out what's underneath it anymore. And I want to get to the end, so I'm going to go pretty quick. Skip a few frames. Maybe that one. Maybe this one. I like the little bloody stump of his neck. So I want to keep that in. And then what do I end with? Something that shows Skeletor pretty clearly, right? Maybe that one. Because in your storyboard, you don't need to set it to reset, right? You just want it to really showcase that transformation. Now this one, what might else I use? I could try maybe this one instead. And I kind of like that because it reveals the Skeletor a little bit more clearly. Okay, so that is my storyboard. And then maybe I want a different Skeletor at the end. Yeah, why not that one? Let's turn that one off, move this one down. Now what's beautiful about this is 30 by 40 inches by 100 pixels per inch, but that is also, if you look at image size, and we don't resample, so we keep those native pixels, if we make it 8 inches, this is more than large enough to print it 8 by 10 by 300. So this becomes a print portfolio piece, if we want it to be. We don't even need to change it. But it has the pixels for that. So now how do I save this? I do not overwrite my stage, right? So I say File, Save As, and I rename it. This will be my third PSD. And it is, I'll put it to the desktop just to be sure. This is called a refined storyboard. Save it as a Photoshop document to the desktop. Save. Make sure it's there. Mark it green because this is a working format. Okay. Now I can save it as an online format to post. So now, you see how it says refined storyboard there? It doesn't hurt my stage. Then I go to File, Save a Copy, and it's already got the refined storyboard name. Make it a JPEG because it's filling a rectangle. That white is part of it. And say Save to the desktop. And now that's our online format for our refined storyboard. So then we go to our post where we've posted our requirements, and we click Edit, and this will be requirement 3. And we'll do the presentation critique for these next class because it's due by 11:59 tonight. And the final requirement is the refined storyboard. And I'll put the measurements there. 30 inches by 40 inches at 100 pixels per inch. Which means it's a 1-inch gutter around your central 8 by 8 inch frame. Okay. So if you're not finished with your animation yet, I got to post it. You might need to reference this video for how to make that refined storyboard because it's hard to just kind of figure it out by trial and error on your own. But those steps all make sense for layout to get it perfectly clean because nothing ruins good digital art like having unclean borders or having things not line up and distract the viewer. So we'll come in rather large because it has a white background, right? So then just shrink it to a little bit more than halfway and then save. And now I've got all 3 components. rough storyboard sketch, GIF animation,